Hello folks, my name is Rasmus Almqvist, and in my line of work I help organizations select technologies when driving for very specific business outcomes.
And I help organizations implement often changes to achieve those very specific business outcomes.
Now, some time ago I posted a video where I talked about what I call the tech tsunami, which is being washed upon us all the time. And that's really about vendors throwing out new capabilities every single day. Now, lots of organizations, I argue in this video, are really struggling to make sense of all of this. And I talked about 6 categories that you can look at when trying to evaluate what the impact these new capabilities might have on your organization. Now, one of those 6 categories was adoption and change. And with me, I have, of course, Stephen, and Stephen is an expert in this field. And together with him, the point here is that we should probably try to unpack it just a little bit. Now, Stephen, looking at this whole area of adoption and change, what's the baseline any organization needs to have in order to be able to make that, to conduct the evaluation and to see what the impact on the business might be?
Well, what I'd say that an organization looking at a new technology, and often that's the case. I mean, it's either you've got a new technology and lots of new features are being added. How do you cope with those? Or let's start with the simplest: the new technology that you're considering buying. I think you should be looking at the vendor of the technology and how they can help you with the adoption. It's the kind of job that I do. The job is customer success. It includes adoption and change management, one element of it. There are lots of things.
Yep.
But let's unpack the adoption side of things. I mean, one thing that if I was buying a new technology from a vendor, I would ask the vendor is, what would you do? And one of the first things I would say as a customer success manager, often I do, is having a good approach to implementing the technology. And that starts with the deployment of the technology and the onboarding of users, but there's more to it than that. And so and a formal change program is one of the things that we often talk about. So we've adopted ourselves a standard approach from ProSci. It's called the ADKAR model.
Yep.
It follows it takes users through a kind of a series of steps, starting with awareness, which is all about building awareness for a new tool or a new way of working, which often is required, building some desire for it. In other words, the what's in it for the user and why they should be using a technology and how it's going to make their life better. It's about knowledge, which is often training. I'm not going to go through all of them. Ability and reinforcement are the last elements of it.
Yep.
That's like a formal part of a change program that you need to take users through and enable the customer to help their users in that way. And so we often work with customers.
So that you need to have a methodology, and we want to mention, of course, that there are other methodologies as well out there.
Indeed. It's the one we use at Microsoft.
But you need to have some sort of methodology to be able to work so that everybody in the organization works towards a common goal. But who should these persons be? Who are the people that need to be sitting around the same table and to be responsible for driving this change?
Well, that comes to another part of the approach and method, which is business value and how you're trying to add value to the business. And so that requires some old-fashioned business analysis and understand what priorities of the business you're trying to go after with the technology, who's responsible for that part of the business. For example, the head of sales is interested in sales. If that's what you're targeting with your technology, you should involve people in sales, the head of sales even, and how they are going to get their sales force to use the new technology in new ways to achieve different outcomes. And you need to unpack that. Often it'll be horizontal functions involved as well, like IT, who have an interest in supporting the technology, HR even, because they're interested in change and how it affects employee experience and things like that. So that's all the way it should be. But I'd say the priority is the business line that you're going after.
Now, how do you go about then, bridging the gap between actual usage and the business outcomes? How do you make the correlation between the two?
Yeah, that's all part of the business value work that you do typically. It's you identify, it's quite an iterative process, at least in the way in which I take my customers through it. At Microsoft, it's envisaging a set of outcomes, quantifying them with with KPIs, an element of execution where you embed you embed the change program and the new behaviors and the technology, and then evaluation program, which is how you measure the outcomes. There's an element of measuring usage in that, like the users need to be using it. That's the starting point. If they're not using it, well, you're not going to achieve the outcome anyway. So you need to be tracking that. Most tools offer that. We certainly do. The other thing is, how do you map that to the business outcome?
Yeah, exactly.
That's challenging. It always is. Correlations like that. But you start with hypotheses at the envisaging phase, and you suggest that you're going to achieve certain outcomes based on this use, and it's because of these correlations. You set to prove that in the evaluation phase using analytics, and usage is the starting point, but outcomes is the key.
Yeah, it makes a total sense. I'm just curious to understand what the cycle should be. How quickly should you be able to see the correlation between change happening in your organization and the actual outcomes that you'll be driving for?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're just looking at usage statistics, for example, I mean, that you could pretty much pick up right out of the bat. As soon as users are using it, you're going to see adoption go up.
Yeah.
But why they're using it for what purpose and for what business outcomes, that's going to take a while. And that'll probably depend on things like, well, the rhythm of the business. If it was sales, in the example I gave earlier, you'd probably want to look at your sales cycle and how long that is as an indicator of how long you should implement something before you can measure real impact.
So on the outcomes, sales is a given. That's something you probably will have in any organization as a key priority, but there may be others.
Of course.
And there may be lots of them. Mm-hmm. What would your recommendation be in terms of how many priorities or business outcomes that you should be going after? Because you could be boiling the ocean if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I would advise against that. Exactly that. Because I think you need to be quite focused. So start with what are the priorities for the business.
Yeah.
Maybe revenue is one of them, and this comes from the CEO, really. I mean, or the executive team. They'll know what the business needs to be focusing on this year. If revenue is good, what other parts of the business can you improve? Is it product? Is it R&D? Is it marketing? I mean, there's so many different parts of the business. Then start unpacking areas in those parts of the business that you can prioritize, business scenarios and use cases within them. I'd say pick a smallish amount that is manageable, get successful with those, and then broaden out.
So it's learning whilst you're doing it, becoming better and better, and in unearthing the connection between change and the outcome.
Yes. Yes.
Now, if there are people watching this video right now who are thinking, well, that kind of sounds like a good idea and a good approach, where should they go? I mean, I'm sure there's literature out there.
There's so much, but conveniently, I've written a post, and I'll share it in the info panel below. Just the things to think about if you're looking at buying a new technology for a vendor. These are the things you should be asking them about, how they're going to support you with adoption.
Good stuff. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what you need to do, you need to, of course, subscribe to this channel. But if you don't, that's fine as well. Do post some comments below, or if you are interested in hooking up on LinkedIn, that's fine as well. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Do stay tuned for more videos.
See you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.